Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us. And you are joining us at a great time because we are live right now in the Eric Boyd trial out of Tennessee. On the stand right now is a familiar face if you've been following this case. This is George Thomas. This is the man who's already been convicted and sentenced for the murder of these two young people, Shannon Christian and Christopher Newsom. Now, why is he on the stand? Because he's agreed with the prosecution to testify against Eric Boyd, point the finger at him. He said yesterday that Eric Boyd is the person who shot Christopher Newsom and then set his body on fire. And what does he get in exchange? A much reduced sentence. He was originally sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 25 years. Now he's promised 50 years in prison and only has to serve 85% of that. We're going live right now with the defense cross-examining him about what does he really know? Is he making anything up? Is he trying to protect himself and anybody else? Let's go live. Wow. Okay, so a lot to break down right now. First, joining me is Law and Crime legal analyst Matthew Mangino. My first question to you, Matthew. He is the state's witness. The state says you should believe him, jury. They're saying he saw nothing, though. He says he saw nothing, he did nothing. He's innocent. But the state charged him. They convicted him of this very attack. So how does this work for the state? How does he seem to be a credible witness?
Well, that's a great question, Jesse, and I was thinking that myself. I mean, here's a guy who, let's not forget, he's been convicted of first-degree murder. He has 2 life sentences. He's convicted of rape. He's convicted of kidnapping. That's done. That was all through the state. And now the state is putting him on the witness stand, asking the jurors to believe him, and he's testifying contrary to the convictions that he received. He's saying, I didn't rape anybody. I didn't see anybody get raped. I was with Eric Boyd. I saw him essentially shoot Chris Newsom and, burn his body. I mean, essentially, the state is presenting a witness who they've already convicted of crimes in which he is saying now he did not commit. That's a strange set of circumstances.
Yeah, there was an interesting point there when the defense attorney said, well, you claim that you were with LaTalvis at the house. Yes, which means you had to be there when was raped. And as we all heard, he had no answer to that, the witness, Mr. Thomas, he had no answer to that. I want to get a different perspective on this case because it is horrifying and interesting from a number of different levels. Joining me on set is a very special guest, licensed clinical social worker, Jennifer Bohr-Cuevas. Jennifer, great to have you here on Law and Crime. We really appreciate your insight. Here's my question to you. Whoever really did this, if it was Eric Boyd, if it was Thomas, if it was all of them, what is the makeup of a person or people to commit this level of attack, rape, torture, murder? How does this happen?
What you are witnessing are people who I believe, again, with not having examined these people, I do see threads of people who may be sociopaths, psychopaths, otherwise known as people with antisocial personality disorder. I also see threadings of people with sadistic behavior. People who are sadists are people who actually derive joy and pleasure from sexual deviance and causing people to suffer,
right,
and humiliate them.
That's the scary part, trying to make sense of this, because it seems impossible to make sense of this. And we will have an opportunity to talk more about this and what these two went through. It's a horrifying case, but an interesting legal development. Now's time to take a break. When we come back, we're going to jump live. A new witness is on the stand. Stay tuned. All right, so Matthew, did we gain a lot from that witness? I mean, we're talking about the case against Eric Boyd. I know this state has to develop their case and their story, but how impactful was that witness?
Well, at this point, it doesn't appear that she was very impactful. Maybe there's some connection to further testimony that we're going to hear from the state's case at this point. I mean, there was just a single question on cross-examination. So, no, I don't think that this is, at least in the context of what we know right now, a very important witness, although the state does have to be methodical and put on all the evidence that it can if it in some way is going to impact later testimony in this case.
And I want to go back to what we heard earlier, Matthew, because this was pretty incredible with that witness who took the stand, George Thomas. I still can't get over his testimony. I mean, yes, he pointed the finger at Boyd. And we talked about earlier, there's so much room for the defense to say he's not credible. But on the other hand, if he was the ideal witness for the state, he would have said, I saw Boyd rape this girl. I saw him rape this man. I saw him kill Newsom at point blank range. But he more talked about things that he saw and heard and more importantly, what he didn't hear. So was he credible or was he not? Because he could have given the prosecution a lot more than he did.
Well, yeah, he could have, certainly. But I think what's interesting here is that while George Thomas, is testifying against Eric Boyd, he wants to minimize his involvement. So he still has this, this sort of presentation that, I was there, but I didn't do anything wrong, even though he's been convicted. In order to minimize his own involvement in this, he had to minimize what he observed and where he was and what he heard. And I think it's more about George Thomas trying to say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong here, as much as it is, putting Eric Boyd with a gun in his hand, firing 3 shots, and then lighting Chris Newsom's body on fire.
Yeah, and the defense also tried to make the point that he's trying to protect his other co-defendant, who was one of his good friends, and casting the blame away from him and pointing on Eric Boyd. Now, as you can see, there is a new witness on the stand. We're not sure her relation to any of the players in this case, but I'll tell you what, it's time to go live and we'll find out. Okay, so this witness is interesting because she actually sold furniture to one of the defendants, Lamarcus Davidson. As you can hear, there was a problem getting money back. That's not the least of his problems. So let's actually focus on a different aspect. Now, Jennifer, the question that I have for you, and if we go back to what we heard with George Thomas, it was all about, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I shouldn't have been charged, I shouldn't have been arrested, and he kept saying, that these are the people, I didn't see anything, I didn't do anything. Now, could be true, could not be true. I mean, he has been convicted, and in the eyes of the law, he is one of the people that helped with the murder and the rape and the kidnapping of these 2 people. But from your perspective, is that interesting to hear him say that?
Actually, I don't think it's interesting. I think that it's par for the course. People with psychopathic tendencies are very able to act like you and me. They regulate their emotions, yet they take no ownership whatsoever. So I am not surprised that he's sitting here testifying that it wasn't me, it wasn't me.
And look, I know it's difficult. You haven't had an opportunity to examine her or diagnose him, but from a general perspective, we're trying to understand it. And I guess the other concept, too, is the people that committed these crimes, it seemed to be just, they took these 2 innocent people out of nowhere. They had no relation to them. They were complete strangers. So as we're trying to search a motive here, or why did these 2 were targeted, what should we be thinking about?
Again, I'm going to go back to, I think that this group of people were a collection of psychopaths, and they were looking for some sort of excitement. They were looking for somebody to torture for their own satisfaction.
It was wrong time, wrong place.
Exactly.
That's just such a disturbing aspect, because we see these 2, they were literally just having a nice night. They were going to meet some friends, a young couple, and just taken out of nowhere. And we heard in the beginning part of this trial how their friends and family were so concerned because they didn't know what happened to them. And there was this search, and obviously we all know what happened and what condition they were found. It's a horrific case from a lot of different angles. And now the question is, what was Eric Boyd's involvement, and what will the jury think? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll jump live with more testimony. Okay, Matthew, I thought this was an interesting witness because she observes that this house, the windows are down, it looks a bit unusual. But did I understand that correctly? The defense was trying to say, well, you observed Mr. Thomas, and what state was he in? Did I get that right, or did I miss something?
No, I thought that's what she said, that she had observed George Thomas. And I think you're right on when they're trying to show that, hey, George Thomas, he's testified in this case. ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and he said he wasn't involved. That he was there, but he didn't see a lot, and that's not really true. I mean, that's
Right.
not really accurate. So they're attacking, it appears, George Thomas's credibility through other witnesses who observed the area around what the crimes were committed.
Yeah, that's a strong point for the defense right there after some pretty explosive testimony on his part. Jennifer, I want to come back to you. We're still trying to make sense of why this attack occurred, why these two people were killed. And people that commit this crime, now, in your opinion, without having the opportunity to review them and speak with them and diagnose them, is there generally sometimes an unmet need, maybe that goes back to childhood trauma? Does it somehow stem from that?
It could. However, there is research to say that people who are diagnosed as being sociopathic or psychopathic actually have different kinds of neurology than people without those diagnostics. It's very difficult to understand how these people operate because we are not like them. Things that would be normally upsetting or chilling to us is actually something that is thrilling to them. So it is fun for them. It is exciting for them. It is meeting a need for them to go out and commit these absolutely brutal crimes. They are cold-hearted.
Do they ever have an opportunity later on in their life to say, wow, I regret what I did, I realize what I did was wrong, or they always, throughout the rest of their life, they're always going to say, I did nothing wrong, I'm justified, I felt good about it?
They will never take ownership. These are people that cannot be cured because they have no inner voice that says to them, I may be doing something wrong. They are cold. They are calculating. They are very hard to understand for people who have that inner voice that points out when we are about to do something wrong.
That's just really interesting account. I mean, that's the scary part about this. You have very scary people out there, ladies and gentlemen. We cover it every day. Matthew, I want to come back to you about something. Where are we with the prosecution's case? Have they presented a strong case in day 3 so far, based upon what you've heard from the last few days, that Eric Boyd is somebody who either killed these individuals, raped these individuals, helped kidnap them? Do we have that yet? Or is it just still an instance where he knew them, he might have helped them after the fact, or might have known more than he's laying on? I mean, you tell me where we're at with the prosecution's case.
Well, George Thomas has unequivocally told us that Eric Boyd left the car with Chris Newsom. He saw 3 flashes of gunshot. He came back, got gasoline, went out, and then he heard a whoosh, which means that the body was lit on fire. That's good evidence implicating Eric Boyd, if you believe George Thomas. And that's what this case is going to come down to. Do the jurors believe George Thomas? Is he credible? A convicted killer involved in these killings himself, rapes, kidnapping. A jury's already made that determination. And now comes in and says, hey, I really wasn't involved. I just observed things. I heard things. So he's basically challenging this jury to say, you know what? The jury that convicted you was wrong. You were falsely convicted, and we believe you that Eric Boyd was responsible for these homicides. That's going to be a difficult thing, for the prosecution to do in this case.
But can they secure a conviction without maybe significant corroborating evidence? I mean, if, again, we're still in the beginning parts of this case, but if the jury doesn't really seize on other kinds of corroborating evidence, could they just literally go and say, we're going to convict him based upon the word of another man?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. Eyewitnesses, there's no physical evidence. Juries believe eyewitnesses who observe a killing or another type of crime. Here we have a tainted eyewitness. This isn't some independent person, law-abiding citizen who happens to see a crime. This is a guy who's been convicted for being involved in these crimes, who's now saying, well, this is who did it. I didn't tell you this 12 years ago, but I'm going to tell you now. And then you go to the next point. Well, why are you telling us now? Well, because I face the prospect of spending the rest of my life in jail. And if I come in here and testify, I might get a chance to get out. You know, the jury's going to have a lot to work with.
Yep, and we've seen that before, and we've seen it time and again. I'll tell you what, let's take a break. When we come back, they've taken a mid-morning break, so we'll take a break. When we come back, clearly a lot more to talk about. Stay tuned.